In the early hours of November the 28th, 1980, a serving British police officer began what should have been a routine shift. His name was Alan Godfrey, a constable with West Yorkshire Police. By the end of that morning, he would have filed one of the most unusual on-duty reports in British policing history, not as a civilian, not as a believer, but as an officer doing his job. Todmorden, at the time, was already tense. There had been unexplained cattle deaths reported in the surrounding countryside, and Godfrey was tasked with checking rural roads in heavy fog, alone, in the early morning hours. This wasn't a paranormal call, it was paperwork and patrol. While driving along Burnley Road, Godfrey reported seeing an object ahead of him in the road. At first, he thought it might be something ordinary, even a bus blocking his path. But as he approached, the shape stopped making sense. He later described the large, diamond-shaped object, metallic, rotating, hovering just above the roadway, silent and close enough to force him to slow and stop. And then something fractured. The next clear memory Godfrey reported was being further down the road, with no recollection of how he got there. Roughly 25 to 30 minutes were missing. His watch time didn't match his sense of movement, and he was still on duty. This wasn't panic, it was confusion. Godfrey returned to the station and did what police officers are trained to do. He documented the incident, including a sketch of what he believed he'd seen. Not a UFO report, a work report. Colleagues later described him as visibly shaken, struggling to reconcile the time gap with his memory of the drive. In the days that followed, Godfrey underwent medical examination. No drugs, no alcohol, no obvious physical trauma to explain the experience. Later retellings had further details, claims that when colleagues revisited the site, the section of the road where the object was said to hover appeared dry, while surrounding areas were wet from earlier rain. That detail is reported, not conclusively verified, but it became part of why the case persisted. Over time, the incident drew attention from UK UFO researchers active at the time. Not internet commentators, but investigators who routinely examined unexplained sightings. Months later, Godfrey also underwent regression hypnosis. That process introduced far more dramatic claims, including encounters with non-human beings. These later elements are widely disputed, even by those who take the original incident seriously, and critically, they were not part of the initial on-duty report. Skeptical explanations have been offered. Some point to fog, stress, fatigue, or misperception on a difficult rural road. Others suggest psychological disassociation or confusion following an intense moment. One local theory proposes that aspects of Godfrey's sketch resemble a nearby Futuro house, a distinctive circular structure, suggesting his mind may have tried to fill in something unfamiliar. But none of these explanations account for every element, particularly the documented time gap and immediate distress. What often gets lost is that Alan Godfrey didn't gain from this story. He didn't become wealthy, he didn't build a career on it, and he didn't seek notoriety. He remained consistent on one point. Something happened on that road, even if he never fully understood what. The Alan Godfrey case sits in an uncomfortable middle ground. It's verifiable, but unresolved, grounded in real records, but open to interpretation, anchored in an ordinary man doing an ordinary job, when something extraordinary interrupted it. And perhaps that's why it still unsettles people, because it doesn't demand belief. It simply leaves you with a question that refuses to settle. If time slipped away while you were doing your job, and no explanation quite fit, what would you trust more? Your training or your experience?